All right, David, we are ready whenever you are.
Uh, Good morning, everyone. My name is David Gornet, and I would like to welcome you all to the Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce Infrastructure Division webinar for June of 2020. Thank you for taking the time to participate today. I am the Infrastructure Division Planning Chair for the Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce. The Fort Bend Chamber is the only five-star accredited chamber in the greater Houston region, and it serves as the advocate for excellence in Fort Bend County for both our business partners and our community. I would like to take this time this morning now to recognize our sponsors, Cobb Finley and Associates, H.R. Green, and MBCO Engineering LLC. We have two of our sponsors here with us today. Mr. Frank Marino with H.R. Green, would you like to say a few words?
I don't think so. I'm here, and hopefully if there's something I can aid with, I will.
Okay. Mr. Scurry with Cobb Finley and Associates, would you care to say a few words?
Floyd is muted.
You're muted, Floyd.
All right, is that better? Sorry about that. I didn't want to be much louder when you guys were talking. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank the Chamber for allowing us to sponsor this morning's event. I'm with Cobb Finley Associates, a Texas-based engineering company working on infrastructure projects in the greater Fort Bend County through our local offices. And just like you, I look forward to hearing from the Commissioner this morning, talk on this morning's topic. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Floyd. And thank you to all of our sponsors today and all those that support the Chamber and the Infrastructure Division. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to take a moment to tell everyone in the audience about the chat feature. At the bottom of your screen, there's a little chat. We already have 7 notes in the chat feature down there, but feel free to type your messages in there at the bottom of your screen in that dialog box, and we'll address those questions after Commissioner Prestage concludes his presentation. Commissioner Grady Prestage, he assumed office in November of 1990 and represents Fort Bend County Precinct 2, which includes portions of Houston, Missouri City, and Stafford. While in office, he has initiated the development of the Fort Bend County Community Development Department, the Fort Bend County Housing Finance Corporation, the Fort Bend Toll Road Authority, and the Fort Bend County Parks and Recreation Department. The Commissioner has been involved in the development of numerous county facilities, including parks, community centers, libraries, annex buildings, and many major mobility projects. We are very pleased to have you with us, Commissioner. And so without any more, I'd like to turn it over to you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Prestage.
Thank you for having me. And I want to give a special thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gornet, for your leadership and what you do to make this community better. You and I pretty much are roughly the same age, and you held up a lot better than I did. But
I don't think so.
We've worked together on many projects in the past, and I'm excited to be here. I want to also thank the sponsors, all 3 of whom I know very well, NBCO, H.R. Green, and Cobb Finley. 3 fine organizations, and I wish you nothing but prosperity in the future. Mr. Gornet gave you my introduction, and it's not much more to it, but I've been in this position as a county commissioner for 30 years. And so I think I've got a few things figured out. And one thing I figured out is to learn how to run in my own lane. And do what I do best. Public speaking, well, it's part of the job. It's not something I run towards. But one reason is that I have a high bar in terms of what I want to convey and deliver. And so rather than come here and as speaking for the infrastructure committee, and reel off a list of projects that the county may be involved in right now, would probably sell you short. And so when I make a presentation, I want to do something that that's memorable. And so rather than just reel off some information, I really want to inform you. I want to make you be insightful about things, trying to really think about things and to inspire you. And so that's my goal for the day. So that's the basis for my my topic. My topic was, as I submitted to the chamber, it was geographically, racially, and socioeconomically balanced infrastructure development in Fort Bend County, past, present, and future. That's a mouthful, and so it gave me a broad range to talk about certain things. When I saw the draft of the flyer, and this is an interesting story, you know, as any good staffer would do, they tried to catch the essence of my title in a couple of words that would fit well on a masthead, you know. And so the first draft they sent me said, infrastructure inequity. Oh, okay, whoa. That's sort of what I said, but not quite, because then it made me think about it. I said, infrastructure inequity. So let's look at the definition of inequity. Inequity means a lack of fairness or justice. That's not the message I wanted to convey. There's a time for that. There's a time for that, and there's probably a different person to deliver that kind of message to a willing audience. I looked further in my Webster's abridged version, and I saw inequality. Okay, so infrastructure inequality rolls off a little bit better. Inequality is the quality of being unequal or uneven, such as social disparity or distribution, a disparity in distribution of opportunity or goods and services. Okay, that sounds better. So here we are, infrastructure inequality. That's a little bit more apropos for this audience. And Ryan, I hate to put you on the spot, but you gave me some fodder to speak about this morning, so appreciate that. Geographically, racially, and socioeconomically balanced infrastructure development in Fort Bend County. I'll break that up by parts if I can. Geographically balanced infrastructure development. We all live in one of the premier communities in this country. Fort Bend County has gotten national notoriety for the quality of life we've developed here, how diverse this community is, and we're the envy of a lot of places in this country and in this region. Let's look at how this area developed, and we can get an understanding of how we have geographically balanced infrastructure development in some cases, and in some cases we don't. This part of Texas developed fast for a couple of reasons. And it's the advent of the planned community. Planned communities have been around, many communities around this country that were actually planned communities. But here in Texas, there was some enabling legislation passed some time ago that gave way to the creation of municipal utility districts. It's a magic word, MUD districts. MUD districts allow this community to grow fast and at a high quality. You couple MUD districts with the other variables out there, like land, large tracts of land in single ownership that's relatively easy to acquire, low regulation in general, with Houston being a big city with zero zoning, and unincorporated areas of the county, of any county in the state that has little or no regulation no land use control. They can't, to a certain extent, require much in the way of building permits. You can pretty much do what you want to do. And small cities that lacked the management and administrative infrastructure to regulate development at the time. And finally, the Houston sprawl, the endless demand for housing for people who are coming to the Houston area for jobs in the oil and gas business, Space Center, the medical center, banking, and all the ancillary jobs that come along with it. So we had a perfect storm, a perfect environment. But mud districts were, I think, were the key feature. This was a situation where someone could actually acquire a piece of land, create a political subdivision, put all the necessary infrastructure to support development in, get paid by selling finished lots to home builders, and then getting some mailbox money a few years later when the debt is assumed by the residents and they reimburse that developer for much of the cost of his infrastructure, certainly water, sewer, and drainage. It's a very, very good situation. The alternative would be for a city to extend its infrastructure out into the suburbs or out into the unincorporated area, and that's a slow process. Mud districts make it happen in a hurry. So my hats off to those who had the foresight to create that type of legislation. It was a boom for both the private sector and for the public sector, because you created some fine communities. And so with that type of blueprint, you can develop pretty fast. Other areas of the state, in the Metroplex, they didn't embrace mud districts quite so much, but they still have rapid growth. But I think mud districts were key to development of the infrastructure, because you got to say at the time, the county and the cities really didn't do anything. I mean, you think about it, Fort Bend County, it wasn't until 2001 that we had our first mobility bond election. 2001, the first bond election for mobility projects in the county's history. We were fortunate to just be in the path of growth. And we benefited from this maze of state highways, some improved, some unimproved, I-10, US 90A, 59, and all the farm to market roads, which were farm to market roads. There were gravel roads that were pathways where farmers and ranchers could get their products to market, that were upgraded over time with FM 2234, FM 1093, FM 1092, 1464. All those farm to market roads were there, and they provided the transportation infrastructure necessary to couple it with the developers' infrastructure development to make for some fine communities and some orderly growth. Well, that's the past. That's the backdrop of how we got here. Right now, the county and the cities are more engaged, as are the school districts, in active infrastructure development. And they're putting these facilities where the people need them. And I'm proud of some of those efforts. Bond elections are pretty common nowadays. Since having the 2001 mobility bond election, the county has had at least 4 since then. I can recall 07, 13, 17, and we have one slated for this November, 2020, probably something to the tune of $200 million in mobility projects to meet the demand. It's incumbent upon us to assist and support public referendums, bond referendums that are smart whenever we can. And this is one time where the chamber and some of the other community leaders have to step up. We're in the midst of a pandemic that we've never seen in our lifetime. And I think it'd be unfortunate if we buried our head in the sand and didn't look ahead and see what's best for the growth and development of this county. So you're going to be asked this November to support school bonds, county road bonds, and please do so if you can. I think the future growth and development of our area are dependent on decisions you make at the polls in November. There's a lot of other development going on here, and a couple of other phenomena that I want to mention that are happening now. Infill development. You know, the plan normally would be to for a home buyer just keep driving until you can afford it, and so you had the other variables I talked about earlier with big tracts of land and single ownership that you can build these big communities. But in doing so, you skipped over a lot of very nice developable areas. You know, when people come here from out of town, they see it's so odd that they can drive around and see these nice big homes and big communities and nice amenities and retail. And then you go another block, you have a cow pasture. And it kind of just baffles them. You know, what is this all about? You know, well, yeah, those are infill opportunities. And I'm talking about tracts of land that may be 20, 30, 40 acres, sometimes as small as 10 acres. You can put a lot of development, even residential, in some of those areas. And with the trend nowadays being towards higher density development and higher density development that's not automatically compared to being low quality development. But you know, we have way more house, way more lot than most of us ever need. How many of you have, actually go in your backyards? Be honest. Unless you have some small children, you've got all this yard and you don't use it. Okay, but I know it's what people feel is best for their quality of life and makes them feel good. But more dense development is on the way, and the economics are going to drive it too. It's just going to be much more affordable to provide quality development when you don't have to eat up 5,000 square foot lot and still have a good quality of life. And we have business growth and development in all parts of the county. So I'm painting a rosy picture on this address. I'm not saying that we have geographically imbalanced infrastructure development. I think we've done a decent job. There are some areas that we need to go back and work on. Okay, and that's been one of my missions since I joined the Commissioner's Court. When I found that there were areas within a stone's throw of high-end homes where people had really substandard qualities of life. You can have a nice community, and next door, you got people who don't have public water and sewer system, which is not necessarily that bad, but they're substandard on-site septic and wells. And I've seen myself situations where a pipe runs out of the house or out of the trailer right into the ditch with raw sewage in this county. And I've seen people run hose pipes from trailer to trailer, house to house, so that people have water. I see wells that are not properly functioning. I've seen septic systems that are not normally serviced. I see septic systems on small lots with not enough spacing between those septic systems and the wells. And that's not a good situation to be in. Just like with mud districts, if you got a piece of raw land, it's very easy to put in public water and sewer. If you have an area that's already inhabited with people who live in there, and and you try to do that, it's very, very difficult. Okay, you have to get everybody to buy in and give up easements and just, you know, a wide variety of things that makes that a very, very difficult task. So I'm happy to say that we have almost eradicated most of those kind of situations in the county. And it wasn't necessarily because of Grady Prestage. I certainly had 2 big communities that I worked on, but the other members of the Commissioners Court, past and present, worked on those type of issues to eradicate those kind of situations, because it does affect everybody. If a kid comes from a community where you have these type of substandard conditions and they're susceptible to all types of childhood diseases and infections, they're going to sit in class right next to your kids, okay? And it does matter. It makes a difference. And I'm proud of the county as we stepped up and tried to eradicate those situations. And the cities, of course, have that authority and they've been able to regulate that thing to help those things not happen in the first place. But with little regulation of in unincorporated areas, counties never really had a chance to control that. And we're trying to get a grip on that now and make sure that those kind of situations don't exist. Racially balanced infrastructure development. You know, I think by and large, it's been fair and balanced in this county. Some of the areas we just talked about, some of the colonious type areas that had substandard development, those were communities of color by and large, and we addressed those things. But because this county is so diverse, it's so diverse that you can't really cast any blame on anyone for things that happened in the past. And we've almost gotten as close as we can to a post-segregated community. There are people who congregate in certain areas because they got familiarity, because it's in their price range. A lot of factors take them to certain areas of this county. But on any given day, you can knock on any door in this county and you probably wouldn't know who would come to the door. So we've got a pretty diverse population, and I'm proud of it. And what we need to do is make sure that doesn't become a factor. You know, we've had situations in the past where we had, and still do, we had segregated communities and segregated schools and churches, but it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way things evolve. But with the diversity we have right now, I think the future looks bright. And as we try to make sure that we have racially and socioeconomically balanced infrastructure development in all parts of the county. So, as if I were giving a commencement address, I would have to challenge this audience somehow or another to do better. So, what do we do to make sure that we do our part to make sure that we have geographically, racially, and socioeconomically balanced infrastructure development in the county in the future? So how do we move forward from here? I may raise 3 points. One, as you do what you do, if you're a housing developer, if you're an engineer, an architect, or a financier, whatever, make sure you understand your market. Not one size doesn't always fit all. Understand your market. And certain things that certain communities need and expect, we got to be able to give it to them. And so you have to really study the demographics of this area now and as they're projected. Understand your market. That can make a big difference. Second, I'd say you need to build relationships across the spectrum. Get out of your comfort zone, meet people from other communities that they can really teach you a lot, and you can in turn share a lot. So build relationships across the spectrum. That's very, very important. Very important. And you have an excellent situation here in this county with the diversity. It's a perfect situation for you to learn more and do more and help make the future better. And finally, support smart infrastructure development wherever possible. Okay, roads don't just happen on their own. Schools don't just pop up on their own. The public has to support these development of these institutions, and your vote and support is important that we get that getting those things done. So that's my message. If you want me to come back the next time and read a list of projects that the county has done, okay, I'll do that. And certainly if there's some things going on right now that you want to know about, I'll be happy to discuss them with you. But I really wanted to challenge you to inform you, to give you some insight and help you to be insightful and to inspire you somehow or another to continue to do good things to make this county better. That's my message, and I appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We'll be looking at all the questions that come out here. And I haven't seen Commissioner DeMerchant had made some comments about with you when we announced that you were coming on at the end of his presentation a couple of weeks ago. He was like, oh, I have to get on there and heckle him about stuff. So I haven't seen questions come up yet here. I'm sure that he is looking to you for the leadership and experience that you can share and guidance on as he tries to address many of the issues that face his precinct, things that you've seen.
Right. Commissioner Merchant is a good public servant. Yeah, he's got it figured out.
And you mentioned some of this. I was going to ask a question. How challenging has it been as you work with the different cities that you go through, and specifically the infill development? You have areas around Stafford that aren't annexed into Stafford, they're county, but they need infrastructure, and they are surrounded by a lot of newer development that has, whether it's whatever level range it is, but they have water and sewer and drainage, and it would seem so easy as we were developing some of these mud districts to add a little additional capacity to cover these infill areas.
Yeah, and that did happen to a certain extent. Understand the lay of the land. When I came in office, and even today, to a certain extent, counties did not have the authority, the statutory authority to incur debt to build public water and sewer facilities. I mean, and the legislature, which grants all the powers to the county, we don't have ordinance making power. We can't just assume a function that we can do it unless it's specifically called for in the state constitution and its statutes. So we were precluded from incurring debt to build public water and sewer facilities because the prevailing wisdom at the legislature was this, is that if people wanted to live in a city where they had all that regulation, they go live in a city. But if a family wanted to move out into the country, out in the county, as they say, they'll be free from that kind of regulation. So, and understand, much of the time, until recently, Texas was run by rural interests. I mean, at one point in time in the mid-'80s, you had the governor was from Haskell. You had the speaker was from Hale Center. You had key members of all the committees that were from rural communities, and they rose to leadership positions because they'd been in the legislature a long time and had the tenure. And I can remember growing up and trying to get this prohibition on a county incurring debt for water and sewer facilities and deaf ears. It took 3 sessions of the legislature to get that permission. And it only came when Harris County decided that they'd like it. And it was a bracketed bill. So it pertained to a county of 2.8 million or a county adjacent to a county of 2.8 million. And at that point in time, that was Harris County and the counties that were contiguous to Harris County. And it allowed us to do it, but pretty much only with revenue bonds, without general obligation bonds. So the revenues from that project had to essentially pay for that project. And so, so it's a very difficult situation. And the fishery community that we're talking about, we got a water and sewer system built, and we got it built with a federal grant. Okay, we had become an annual recipient of a community development block grant entitlement, and we did a program called a Section 108 loan program where we borrowed money for this capital project from HUD and paid it back from our entitlement. They took the money from our entitlement every year for 10 years until the system was paid back. And so we created a water and sewer system. And fortunately, we didn't have to build a plant or a treatment plant, a water plant or a treatment plant, because Fort Bend Water Control and Improvement District number 2 was there, and these areas were contiguous to that area. And so, you know, it'd be better off if those people were who got service would be part of that district, because they pay 1.5 times or maybe 2 times the rate, and the county owns this system, and so we had no real way to support the maintenance of it other than through the benevolence or an agreement with WCID number 2. And now when we built this system, it was around early 90s, 92, 93. And so when we built it, you know, and I'm a civil engineer, I said, well, you know, we may be 25 years before we have to worry about it. So we just figure that out when we get there. Well, 25 years came around real fast, okay, and that system started to deteriorate. And recently, over the last couple of years, we had situations where we got infiltration and all kind of issues there, capacity issues, quality of our fluent that we have to deal with, and we can't go to the voters, to the taxpayers in Fort Bend County and ask them to pay for a system that only benefits some areas. That political calculus doesn't work. So we're struggling now with how to do that. Fortunately, we had some developments that came in, and we were able to ask them to make these upgrades so they can have service. And so we were lucky in that regard. And a major trunk line is in need of replacement, and we're doing a mobility project on that, and we'll replace that this water and sewer lines as part of the road project. Okay, but it's not easy to do that, but I think that the county's done well. We found another tool in the legal toolbox. It's one that allows a county to assist in the creation of a fresh water supply district. And you know, I mentioned earlier in my address that it's easy to create a mud district when it's vacant land. You put your plan together, let the state sign off on it, you go to work. Well, in some areas, a couple of areas in the county, you had people living there and they needed a water and sewer system. And we found that if we proposed a creation of a fresh water supply district, that they can actually form an elected board, and they can have the power that a mud district has in essence. But it's hard to get people to tax themselves. Okay, it's hard. If you come there and the tax is already in place, okay, that's fine. But it's very, very difficult to get people to do it. It takes a lot of on the ground work, talking to people and having them understand how much difference this makes in their property values, and how much better their community would be if they have public water and sewer. And we're successful in creating 2 freshwater supply districts. One was in Precinct 2, which is now in Precinct 1 after some redistricting, and one's in Precinct 4, and which originally was in Precinct 3 when this effort started. So everybody bought in. Commissioners, court members, county judges, past and present, all bought in to this, and we've been able to make it happen. David, I want to apologize. I over-answer. You give me a short. Okay, I want to make that apology right off the bat, but having been around so long, there's so many things I want to share, and some experiences I have that I think might be beneficial. So I apologize in advance for 5-minute answer to a 5-second question. So,
Yeah, well, looking at bonds, and I'll try to address some of the comments. We've got a number of comments showed up on the chat window here. When you mentioned the bonds, the various mobility bonds that we've had, someone asked, do you see the bond elections playing a part in creating inequalities, or are they opportunities to solve inequalities?
yes, yes, and yes. Okay, those projects, and I tried to qualify my challenge to you. I said support smart infrastructure development. Okay, and so you've got to not just build for the sake of building, and you got to be careful not to overbuild. Okay, not to overbuild, and you got to know what you're doing. And I'll make a confession. I said that the county only had its first bond election in 2001. We screwed that one up royally. We picked TxDOT, not TxDOT you have today that's flush with money. We picked broke TxDOT to partner with. Okay, so there's two different TxDOTs. Okay, we picked broke TxDOT that we made sort of deals with them that we would design these projects, because you can't build it until you design it. And we would design these projects, and when we did, then TxDOT would build these projects. And we have a lot of plans that are in the drawer right now somewhere, that projects that never got built, or they got built later on when the circumstances had changed and the expectations had changed, and they were not suitable projects to build as they were designed. Okay, and we actually got in trouble, somewhat trouble with the feds. We had arbitrage issues where we sold the debt in anticipation that we would move this money, these projects real fast, and didn't. And the IRS doesn't like that. And the story behind that is years through the 60s and 70s, a lot of political subdivisions in this country would sell debt and put it in the bank and make money off of it. And that's when deposits were yielding great returns, and they can borrow this money cheaply with bonded indebtedness. And so the IRS put in a thing where they calculated the, you had a certain time to use this money. If you didn't, you pay a penalty. You pay a penalty because the investors who bought those bonds were achieving savings against their federal taxes from buying municipal bonds. Yeah. So we got in trouble. We made some payments, some penalties to the IRS, and learned our lesson that we won't get ahead of ourselves and start actually selling the debt that we had authorization for until these projects were actually ready to go. And we perfected it later on by not doing that and by picking better partners. Now we'll play with rich TxDOT any day of the week right now, but broke TxDOT, well, not so much.
Well, rich TxDOT, given the current oil and gas issues and the pandemic crisis and people not driving, which means I'm not putting gas in my car twice a week. I'm doing it every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. Their revenues are down, so they may not be as flush as we would like these days. Can you give us an update? One of your current projects, someone asked about, South Post Oak, and then what projects are you excited about advancing, or would you like to see done here with this upcoming bond issue, whether it happens here in November or next year?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the South Post Oak question. South Post Oak is a sort of fragmented road project. The part that's in the city of Houston, we participated in upgrading it. It's pretty much from Beltway 8 to FM 2034. That's done, and there's a portion that's in Fresno area that slated to be improved. That's not in my precinct right now. It used to be, but it's not right now. So I'm not exactly sure the status of that project. There's another portion of South Post Oak, pretty much south of Highway 6. That's a new road, or new by all standards, that we built in partnership with the developer there. That's going to help facilitate a nice community in Arcola. That's going to have a middle school site, and so that's some good news. I'm not exactly sure about that part of South Post Oak, but the part that's not improved, that may be the subject of the question, is a 2-lane asphalt section through the Fresno community, probably from Trammell Fresno Road south to Sycamore, one of those areas in Fresno. But I hope that, while we can't improve all the asphalt open ditch roads in the county, that's not practical. But those that carry a significant amount of traffic or have opportunities to allow for some new development, we'll try to address as best we can. We've got another thing we got to be concerned about in the future. It's more of a maintenance issue. The county accepted plenty of subdivisions back in the 70s and 80s with concrete street, curb, and gutter. And understand the county's road and bridge operation historically has been an asphalt road maintenance operation. We're just trying to figure out how to maintain these concrete roads, and they're coming to the end of their life cycle. And so we're for years we've been trying to shift and get better prepared to deal with maintaining concrete roads and curb and gutter and storm sewers and things like that. That's a real big deal, a much more expensive maintenance situation. And that's going to be our concern for the foreseeable future, because the legislature curbed the ability for cities to annex for involuntary annexation. Up until the last few years, the city could just annex an area at will without consent of the residents. Well, now you pretty much got to have total consent of the residents. And I've said this a couple times in this address, people don't normally vote to tax themselves. And, and so and then you got resistance from the mud district directors out there from giving up those political jobs, okay? Because normally if a city will annex an area and has a mud district, they would dissolve that mud, assume all the assets and all the liabilities, and the board would go away. And so, but that's going to be a slow roll now, because the legislature says, pretty much no involuntary annexation. So only big property owners who feel that their property value or what they sell their land for will be enhanced by being in a city, they can consent, and voluntarily voluntarily ask the city to annex them. Aside from that, it's not going to happen. I think that Greatwood River Park was the last big development that got in before the law changed. If they want to do that today, I don't think they have the authority to do it without getting everybody in that community to vote yes to be annexed into that city.
Well, if you're down in Siena, didn't Siena and Missouri City, before they had residents come in, they entered into a annexation agreement, maybe not an annexation agreement, but an agreement that laid out the steps and the thresholds that would cause the city then to be able to come in and annex.
Yeah.
Siena.
Well, there's some contractual arrangement that was put in place, and that may be the way to get around that. But that becomes then a question of economics. With those planned communities, some of them have a lot of debt, and the city has to decide, at what point in time does that debt make sense to take on? Now there are assets. You got property values, and if you applied your city's sales tax rate to those values, it becomes a math question. Does it add up? And makes sense. Yeah. And cities have been smart enough to annex commercial territory and achieve the sales tax benefits and the property value benefits there without having to provide the services to the residents with police and fire and all the other things that go along with it.
The speaking of the bonds and continuing down the list here, as we're dealing with this pandemic situation, with the oil and gas issues, there was some outcry earlier this year about property values that may have gone up, and trying to get the property value rollbacks as people were having to stay home, or some folks were losing their jobs or being furloughed. The folks are asking about what do you feel is the sentiment of residents to go on and vote for some of these bonds, given the current situation?
Well, I think that's where we have to be smart and not necessarily short-sighted. We have to look at the long game. I mean, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And yeah, right now everybody is dealing with what's happening, and it's not just us. It's the whole world is dealing with this situation, some shape, form, or fashion. The whole world has been put on pause for the last couple of months. Okay, but yeah, it's not going to last forever. And if we don't make smart investments down the road, then we're going to suffer. We won't have some of the amenities that we have. Everybody needs to tighten up and not do things that aren't essential. But I think that in a growing county, 800,000+ people, and they're still coming, we're going to have to make sure that we have roads, bridges, drainage, schools, public infrastructure necessary to handle that growth and development. Just imagine this region. What would it be if you didn't have the toll roads? Okay, now everybody, toll roads can touch a nerve a lot of different ways. But can you imagine if you didn't have it? If you lived in Siena and you didn't have the Fort Bend Parkway toll road, and you had to come up 521, unimproved 521, or meander your way through to try to get to your job, or if you didn't have the West Park toll road, or if Harris County, if Hector didn't have the Sam toll road, it'd be total gridlock here.
You and I were around in 1983 when Harris County was doing that, and there was even TxDOT was fighting Harris County to do toll roads because TxDOT wanted to be the only group building highways in around the area. And
that was broke TxDOT too. So I think that the answer to your question is that think it through and make a decision on what's best, and try to be forward thinking instead of just about how what we're feeling and experiencing right now. And I trust the voters to make good decisions.
Okay.
One thing about bond elections nowadays, and if somebody online can correct me, I think that the law has it now that if you have a referendum, you put it up and it's defeated, you have to sit out for a little while before you can bring it back. And so local public entities are going to be very careful about putting something out there that's not going to pass. Okay. And they have to really work with the citizens to make sure that their proposals are on target. We know the last few years you had situations where, and KDIC is a good case in point with the stadium. Okay, they put it out there and some pushback, and they decided to go ahead and muscle it on through when it got defeated. Came back a few years and, well, not that, maybe a year or so, trimmed it down a little bit, made it a little more palatable and got it passed. But what I don't want is us to develop a history of not supporting bond indebtedness, not supporting a bond referendum, because in a growing county, it's essential. We didn't need it for mobility projects up until the 90s, when we realized that what the developers were doing, what the state had already done, was not enough to make for a good transportation grid in Fort Bend County. So we had to start filling the gaps, expanding some of these road projects, improving them, and building new projects, including toll roads, to make for a better transportation grid.
Yeah. Get a comment here congratulating you or asking you to speak about your role with the city of Arcola and getting their water plant using Section 108 funds. do you care to add a addition? I remember y'all going through that, so.
Yeah, well, Arcola is prime for development. It's in the path of development. And there was a subdivision that came in and they were asked to build a water plant that not only supported the development, but supported the water needs for the rest of the city, which is a big ask, okay? And because Arcola had a sewage treatment plant, but didn't have water. It was one of the problems that they had. And this is going to get worked out. The county is going to step in using federal funds and build that water plant for the city and pay it back over some time with the deduction from our annual entitlement. Same thing happened on 5th Street. And I'm proud of it. This is actually Commissioner Morales's precinct, and he deserves the credit. I was just in the right place at the right time, and I had done one of these before. And I don't know if I was invited to this meeting or if I just crashed the meeting. But when I saw it was an impasse that for this development to happen, we had to pay for this $4.5 million water plant. How are we going to do it? And tax increment financing was on the table, and the county normally participates with the cities on TERS projects. But even with that, there wasn't enough money. It didn't pencil out, as they say, to make some economic sense. So, but if you get a free water plant or a water plant courtesy of the federal government, then it made the deal work. And so I'm excited about that.
And we're going to have to pause here in just a little bit, but some comments here. High density development is good. Vital function communities of lower socioeconomic status don't have the same voice as higher income communities. So yes, they're reflecting, young minds are gravely affected by the inequality of infrastructure. Landlord owners, residential and commercial. So yeah, that rather than a question, that's more of a comment supporting some of your observations on, the impacts of these inequalities to all of us.
Well, Jay, when we talk about these things, we all come out better. Okay, and so I'm gonna do something that may be out of line. I'm gonna give you my phone number. Anybody wants to talk about this stuff, call me. 281-433-4444. Call me if you want to talk. And if I don't answer right away, leave me a message. I promise I'll call you back. I work for you all, and this is my full-time gig. If you want to talk and you want to join in and try to make things better, I'm with you. But call me if you want to talk offline, and because I think we're almost out of time. So.
We are, and I'll share one last comment, was to thank you for a very meaningful presentation. Your leadership, vision, and community commitment are greatly appreciated. They're in the comment section. So I would like to thank you very much, Commissioner Prestage, for your time, your insights. Also, I would like to thank our sponsors. Floyd Scurry there representing Cobb Finley Associates, Frank Marino representing HR Green Associates, and MBCO Engineering. We want to appreciate their supporting this webinar. Before we close, I'd like to make you aware of an upcoming infrastructure event. On Thursday, October 29th, the Infrastructure Division is excited to announce the 2020 Infrastructure Conference will be held at the Safari, Texas Ranch, assuming we don't have a rebound of the COVID virus, from 7:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. This is a collaborative event between the Fort Bend Chamber and the Central Fort Bend Chamber and the Fort Bend Economic Development Corporation. We will provide a comprehensive series of presentations from industry experts on water, development, emergency planning, transportation, energy, public policy, and much more. How we're going to fit all that into 6 hours there is going to be a pretty good challenge for us. If you're interested in joining an upcoming chamber infrastructure event, Please check the chamber calendar at fortbendchamber.com for additional details on how to register. Those engineers that join the webinar today can claim a professional development credit hour toward their registration requirements. Please email Ryan and he will email a certificate out to you. I would like to thank all of you for attending this event today. The recording of this webinar will be available within 48 hours on the Chamber website under the Infrastructure Division tab. And Commissioner, again, thank you very much for your insight and for your continued leadership in our county. I appreciate all that you do for us. Thank you.